if there's an error that I remember from the intellectual tradition that I grew up with, it was the sense that secularism was the answer, right? That as soon as we all wake up to the glory of, our secular selves, that the problems will be solved. And I think we now know enough to realize that that actually leaves a gaping hole that people fill with nonsense, and it creates a nonsensical battle from which no one will emerge. That in fact, we can't go back to the traditional view, and we can't abandon the view entirely. We have to create something that is actually up to the challenge of modernity, but honors the traditions from which we come.
Exactly right. At least in my view, exactly right. And I love, Brett, that, by the way, do you consider yourself an atheist?
I never say that word
Uh-huh.
about myself, and there's a reason that I don't. It's
Uh-huh.
not, I think my sense is that almost anybody who draws the distinction, if they heard me say what I believe, would classify me as one, because I don't believe that there is anything supernatural. There's no reason to hypothesize it. But I don't say that I'm an atheist because atheist now carries baggage. It's an
There you
affirmative
go.
kind of belief.
Exactly.
And the atheists have shouldered that burden very poorly, in my opinion. They have had a religious fervor about them for doing away with other traditions that is completely inappropriate, and it has resulted in some of our smartest atheists, let's say, completely missing the fact that religion is serving a function. That much is obvious evolutionarily.
Right.
And so
Right.
we are obligated not to pretend it's a mistake, which is what
Right.
the new atheists have done. So, no,
Yeah.
I don't call myself an atheist, but probably everybody else would be likely to see me that way.
Sure, fair enough. And I, again, really appreciate the fact that you've distinguished between the label and the baggage that goes, the assumptions that go with that label, which is exactly, the issue that I have with labeling people. That said, I love the fact that you've pointed out that we are in a state of spiritual chaos. And I think more than just chaos, I think it's a void that, politics, whether it is the cultism of QAnon or the cultism of BLM, have swooped in to fill. So, though organized religion is on the decline, that doesn't mean religion is on the decline.
Mm.
And that really does suggest to me that, as human beings, the function that organized religion has played for us is a function that speaks to a deep-seated, perhaps even genetic need of ours, right? The need for belonging, the need for community, and frankly, the need for identity. But the other thing that religion, I think, has done, which I really didn't pay attention to until quite recently, is that it gave human beings a way of cooperating with one another outside of the immediate family. That there was an ability or a reason or an incentive to trust people outside of your immediate family, for better or for worse. Not everybody deserved that trust, obviously, but to trust people outside of your immediate family in order to cooperate on a wider scale, in order to build societies, institutions, and ultimately civilizations. Seems to me that once again, we have among the cults, the cults that we've got raging right now, we have a kind of a blind trust for one another. But I don't see them exactly interested in anything that cooperates with others. I see merely, again, us versus them, which religions, organized religions, traditional religions easily lapse into. I totally understand that. But there is a larger vision, it seems to me, within traditional religions that the cults of our time simply don't have. Am I being, honestly, am I being a little too rosy
No,
about the religions that we've previously belonged to?
no, this is a distinction I have trouble convincing people of. But what we have is traditions that have stood the test of time, about which we can infer certain things must be true, right? It is impossible that something as durable as Islam is not functional. That doesn't make it good or bad, and it will
Sure.
have both components. But we know that it has worked to get people through history. Were it a simple error, the way the new atheists would have it, then those people who believed everything that Muslims believed, except for doctrine, would have an advantage. They'd waste less of their time, and they don't, clearly, or at least they haven't. And so we know that ancient traditions served a purpose. What we don't know is that they continue to serve a purpose. Presumably, the amount, the degree to which they serve people will have changed over time in a way that we can't track. And beyond that, any new belief system, we will not be able to say the same thing. In other words, if we came up with a modern version of an ancient religion or a novel religion, we can't say that it stands the test of time. And so we don't know whether it serves long-term interests or not. So we are stuck in a bit of a predicament, which is that the tools that fashion a coherent belief system are selection. And selection takes time. And so we cannot use that tool. We have to use something better. On the other hand, you know, your description of religions as creating a basis for trust beyond the family, I believe this is literally accurate. And that, in fact, one thing that we cannot see is that selection endowed us with an understanding of immediate family because, evolutionarily speaking, there is a lot to be gained by understanding to whom you are related and how related you are, and to whom you are not directly related but should behave as if you are. So, for example, in-laws, right, are close family, but not for genetic reasons. You're effectively related through your descendants to your in-laws, which is a very interesting evolutionary phenomenon. But in effect, these communities, religious communities, do extend trust beyond the family, but really what you're looking at is extended families. These are lineages. And so the genetic basis for that trust is there up until a certain point at which increasingly modern mixtures of people result in the establishment of trust between populations that may not be closely related. And so there's a new evolutionary question, which is, if I, 200 years ago, being in a Jewish community somewhere, would have extended trust to other Jews that I did not know myself to be related to, but in fact I was, in effect, more closely related to them than to others. Can we now take those same parameters and float them without the genetic connection, right? In other words, can people who have no genetic basis for trust stably come to trust each other? And then, hopefully, the answer to that question is yes. And if the answer to that question is yes, then the ultimate question is, why not the human lineage, right? We are, in fact, so if these belief systems evolved in the context of lineages fighting lineages, and therefore needing to extend trust in order to survive through time, right? The threat from the outside is what causes you to view others as aligned. Well, we are all threatened from the outside. We are now threatened. We've seen the enemy, and it is us, right? Yep. Our technology is going to do us in if we don't figure out how to collaborate. So the question, maybe the ultimate question, is can we view ourselves as one lineage fighting an external threat that is not human in nature, or if it is human, it is us? I suspect the answer to that is yes. Whether we will get there, I don't know.